This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so it's my great honor to introduce Congressman Don Beyer. Don began his public service career in 1986 when Governor Beyer appointed him to the Commonwealth Transportation Board. He then was our lieutenant governor from 1990 to 1998, and he was our Democratic nominee for governor in 1997. He then served with distinction under President Obama as Ambassador to Switzerland and Liechtenstein, and then became our 8th District Congressman. So without further ado, I give Congressman Beyer the floor. Thank you.
Robert, thank you very much. And it's fun to be with all of you. I know all of you well, and I'm pleased to be with friends. You may notice that I'm in my office in Longworth. And so I'm going to try to be really careful about not talking about fundraising, and I'm not going to ask anybody for their vote because I want to make sure that I'm not misusing federal stuff to do something politically. But I would like to update you as your representative on all the amazing things that are going on the Hill and in my life. 1 o'clock this afternoon, in an hour, we're going to drop our 1,000% Assault Weapon Excise Act. We're doing the double entendre there because not only is it an excise tax, but we're trying to excise assault weapons from our population. And this makes it's our clever way to get around the filibuster. Because by making it a tax with a fiscal impact, we can do it with a simple majority in the Senate, just 50 votes plus the vice president. So I'm really hopeful. This is not to demean the bill that Chris Murphy has put together in the Senate. You know, it's a pretty thin bill, but it's the first positive gun safety step in 30 years, literally since the assault weapon ban, which expired 10 years later. So we don't want to trash that at all. That's, God bless them, the camel's nose under the tent, and we want that to pass. And then we'll continue to charge forward. I am excited that we've already dropped the baby bonds bill, which I've been arguing for about 5 or 6 years as a way to overcome the historic disparity in wealth between families. As JD knows well, the difference between the family wealth of a white family and a black family in America is 8-to-1. Hispanic family 7-to-1. Indian family, I think, is like 12-to-1. Native American. So the baby bonds is a matter of giving every child born a bond and then adding to it through the years based on the wealth of the family, with the idea that the best way to get rich in America is to inherit it. But what if you have nothing to inherit generation after generation? So that our young people, they'll 20 years from now would be 20 years old and would have $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 saved up, which they could then use for their education, for starting a business, for many things like that. I'm leading the first ever Fusion Codel to Massachusetts 2 weeks from yesterday, on the 27th of June, to probably the best company in the country, in the world right now, on making fusion happen soon, the next 7 to 10 years, rather than in our grandchildren's lifetimes. And this is most relevant because if we can make this work, the power of the sun with no carbon and no radioactive waste, it totally changes our climate change agenda and our poverty agenda. Because most of the people living in poverty around the world are living in poverty because of an absence of energy, affordable energy or energy period. This is may seem trivial on this context, but we're sharing our NASA reauthorization with the Republicans this morning, which means we're moving closely to actually passing a NASA reauthorization for the first time in years out of the House. And this is exciting because these are the glory days in terms of space and going back to the moon and to Mars and all the big science things. I accidentally ended up chairing that committee, so it's really fun and important. And one more thing before I turn to questions, and I have such a wonderful team. Most of you know Zach Kafritz and Kate Schisler, Aaron Fritzmer. It's a huge agenda that they are managing, and I get to be part of. But one more thing that I really deeply feel about is the way that the Milton Friedman, Jack Welch idea of making shareholder profitability, the number one goals of corporations, is incredibly pernicious and evil. And what it's done is really accelerate the concentration of wealth at the top and leaving many, many people out. And the primary tool to do this was stock buybacks. You know, after the Tax Cut and Jobs Act that Trump passed, they spent more in stock buybacks than they did, way, way more than they did in raises for their employees or in research and development. Basically, stock buybacks are used to improve share price, and since CEO pay is typically tied to share price and improve CEO pay, Elizabeth Warren's got a wonderful bill that says CEOs can't cast their stock options until 10 years after they've left the company. We're not trying to do that. We're just trying to take it back to the way it was 40 years ago, where the SEC had to approve any stock buybacks as in the best interest of the shareholders and the employees and the community. Again, I'm confident this will pass the House. It will pass the Senate when we get some more Democratic senators. But this will change the way big business works and corporations work in America, hopefully in a way that leads to much more economic justice. I'll stop because I know you got a big agenda and everyone wants to get to JD as quickly as possible, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Sure. I'll start out with the first one, which is, you know, most of the electric and natural gas industries in private hands as opposed to mutually owned hands. And there seems to be a lot of inertia toward traditional fossil fuel energy sources. Have you been doing anything on promoting clean energy with respect to electricity and you know, the natural gas industry and so on? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I've got 7 of my bills are in the Build Back Better bill, which we you know, passed in the House and is dead in the Senate for the moment. It goes back and forth day to day, the rumors about whether Manchin is willing to agree to some subset of that with the president. This week, everybody thinks that he's going to do it. Last week, they didn't think he was going to do it. The expectation is if Manchin will sign on to Build Back Better, Sinema, by the way, is fine. We already took out the part she hated. Then that would greatly accelerate the electrification of our transportation industry. Cars and trucks, commercial vehicles, vans, to $12,500 credit to buy an electric vehicle, which if it's a $100,000 Tesla, that doesn't sound much, but if it's a $30,000 Kia Niro, that's a big deal. And it would be everybody's down payment or the like. By the way, as the electric car sales pump up, their cost will come down too, just because of economies of scale. You probably saw we had the vice president at Meridian High School in Falls Church a couple of Fridays ago, because one of the earmarks we got was for electric school buses for Falls Church. And there are 600,000 school buses in America, 97% run on diesel, which is terrible pollutants, including bad for the kids who have to ride in them. Build Back Better passes with that, they'll all be electric in 5 years. So it's John Kerry says if we pass the climate change provisions of Build Back Better, which Manchin's already agreed to, we will be able to keep our 1.7 degree commitment from the Glasgow COP26. So, you know, let's hope and pray that Manchin becomes that 50th vote, and failing that we pick up our Senate seats that are in play around the country. North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio, all open seats. Wisconsin, where we can beat Ron Johnson, and then not lose the Catherine Cortez Mastro and the Mark Kellys and the Raphael Warnocks. You know, we have 3 or 4 that are really at risk too.
Steve Baker, did you have a question for the congressman?
I'd be happy to ask one. Congressman, I'm so sorry I missed the very first part of your talk, but I am really focused on a sort of a more equitable corporate tax structure that makes it fair for other people. How can we do that and still avoid some of these corporate inversions, which they consistently threaten us with if we change the tax structure?
Well, I think many of us wanted a much more aggressive regime than we got. The original Build Back Better that we passed in the House just bumped the corporate rate 4%. from 21 to 25. It bumped the capital gains rate from 20 to 24. Not killers. Nobody was going to invert over that. In fact, when Trump had dropped it from 35, the corporate America would have been thrilled with 28 or 27. Instead, he took it all the way down to 21. And we saw the incredible concentration of wealth that did. 80% of it going to the top couple of percentage of wealthy Americans. That's not in Build Back Better in play on the Senate side now, because Sinema, that was her deal. No corporate tax increases. Other than what's still in play is the 15% minimum tax on overseas income. And right now, we're the only country in the world that taxes our overseas companies. But Joe Biden and Janet Yellen have gotten 67 countries, including Ireland and Cyprus and Switzerland, a lot of the tax havens, to agree that everyone pays at least 15%. And it will be a really good thing to have this international tax structure. It'll be the biggest thing ever done to not eliminate completely, but to really reduce the importance of tax shelters like Switzerland or Luxembourg or Cyprus. And that's still very much in play. And I think we can get that done.
Thank you.
By the way, I'm co-sponsoring the president's billionaire tax bill, which is a little different from the one that Elizabeth Warren and I did last year. It's over $100 million. You have to pay, I think it's a minimum of something like 15%. Because right now, the average billionaire's total tax burden is 8%, which is probably less than anybody on this call, way less than anybody on this call.
But that's on income, not on wealth.
It's actually on income. It's also on wealth. The wealth piece of it is on the income of the unrealized capital gain. So it's not literally what it's looking at the gain that, if, as you know, the clever wealthy people will not take the gain their whole lives and then pass it on to their heirs with the step up in basis, and no one ever pays the capital gain. It just goes away forever, which just means that the rich get richer through the generations. And that's what we're trying to address.
Right. One last question for the Congressman, because he does have to go. Anybody?
Yeah, I get to ask the first question to Celia Rouse, who's chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, in 15 minutes.
Okay. Well, we'll let you just make one or two concluding remarks, and we'll let you go to your very important meeting.
Well, it was not that important. I mean, it's just, it's the I love my job, as you can tell. But please, whenever you need any question, my email is just donbeyer@gmail. Most of you have my cell phone. If you don't, write me and I'll give it to you. I deeply believe that this job is not about me. That public service is never about us personally. It's about how can we serve others in the most meaningful way. And that comes from the bottom of my heart. So please turn to me when you need anything. And thanks for inviting me to be part of this today.
Hey, Don, I do have a question for you that you can ask the chairwoman of the Economic Advisors. President Biden has been hammered on inflation. And so the question is, what else can he do on inflation to help average citizens?
Yeah, Michael, it's the number one topic here. There is a great Biden plan already in play. Our Joint Economic Committee put out another one. They all overlap. The dilemma is that there's so many different causes of the inflation that there isn't any one thing that a president can do to stop it, just as there wasn't any one thing a president could do to start it. The biggest tool is the Federal Reserve raising interest rates, which they're doing. And we just have to hope and pray that they find that really tricky balance between increasing the cost of money and slowing down the economy and pushing us into a recession where people start losing their jobs. Right now, we still have, consumer spending is way up, unemployment. 17 states have the lowest unemployment they've had in the history of their states. We're hitting all-time new marks in low unemployment in various categories. But inflation is also really hurting the people. Older people and people at the lower end of the income scale are getting hammered by the cost of food and the cost of gas. And finding ways to help them is really important.
Okay. Well, thank you once again for dropping by, Don. We really appreciate it. And we
Thank you. I
appreciate
hope in person the next time, I hope. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Now that Don has left, I, not him, will mention that his campaign website is the friendsofdonbeyer.com. And obviously, you're all free to go see his position on the issues there. Our next speaker, who I have given screen sharing authority to, so I think we'll be in for a good slideshow, is J.D. Spain. He is president of the Arlington, Virginia chapter of the NAACP. Prior to that, he also was a candidate for the House of Delegates, and I believe the 49th district at one point. So without further ado, let's give a warm Arlington Senior Democratic welcome to J.D. Spain. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Bob. And don't forget that I was a precinct captain as well. So I put out a lot of flyers back in the day, okay? All right, well, good evening, everyone. Before I start sharing screen, it is a pleasure to be back with you. Bob didn't give me much time, but I'm here during this lunch hour. And I want to also thank Jamie Abrams, who's on the call. She's with our Political Action Committee. Reverend Delisha Davis, who's the chair of our Religious Affairs Committee. Brian Coleman, who is the vice chair of our Housing Committee. And Kenyatta Clements, who's vice chair of our Environmental and Climate Justice Committee, for taking time out of their schedule to be with me here today. So let me see if I can get this right. Sharing screen. All right, here we go.
I can see it. Thank you.
Good. All right. So yeah, this is a presentation for everyone here. Let's go to the next slide. So the briefing topics today that I'm going to be going over is a little bit of vision and mission. I'm going to give you an update on where our membership is today. We have so many issues in the NAACP, but I'm going to talk about what I think are our top 3 issues. And then I'm going to briefly talk about some upcoming events that you can participate in. So first, let's go back, right? Our mission and our history, our vision has not changed. It's right here. We want to achieve equity, political rights, social inclusion, advancing policies. It's all here in front of you. It's been this way since 1909. All right. And your branch of the NAACP has been active since 1940 here in Arlington. So I'm gonna have 2 screenshots. This first one, I just want to show you that where we're at is our branch. When I took over the branch, probably, I think it was 2018 as president, but this is a snapshot from back in 2020, where we had 617 members. Prior to that, when I took over, we had about 250. And then you can just look at this snapshot between October and January 2020, 2021, we had a 17% increase. We had a significant increase after an unfortunate murder of George Floyd, but this is what I'm going to show you next, where we are today. So keep in mind, 7/23, January 25th, 2021. 1,081 members as of June 11th. And you can see in this graph where our annual members, our Silver Life members, which are people who have paid $750, they are permanent life members. The adult annual memberships are people that pay recurring $30 memberships each year. This information is downloaded from National NAACP. So we're doing pretty good with membership. People are engaged, our community is engaged. So without a good solid membership, as you know, you can't do much. And in the NAACP, where even I, as the president, no one gets paid. It's strictly voluntary. We're a 501c4 organization. So I'm just thankful. We are all are here in our leadership team, thankful of our volunteers and people that are willing to serve in this capacity. And I think the engagement is driven by how how we have laid out a strategic plan and focused on the issues, the kitchen table issues, right? All right. I want to just briefly, I said 3 areas. I want to talk about education for just a second because, and I'll take questions at the end, okay? The NAACP Arlington branch was founded and kind of started based on education. And I just want to highlight to you to where we're at today, right? And on a certain issue where our education committee has taken the lead, and that's surrounding literacy. We know, we at the NAACP knows, APS knows that we have a significant number of Black students and Hispanic students that are still falling behind in literacy. And I'm an old Southern guy, right? I was taught reading, writing, and arithmetic. And I will tell you, that if we cannot get in front of and take on this literacy crisis, and some of that has come on because of COVID, totally get it. But if we don't get in front of this as a community, that we're going to end up graduating folks and putting people out in society that are illiterate, basically. And there's so many second and third order effects in the socioeconomic aspect that will from that, right? Jobs, mental state, depression. There's a number of studies, but we have to do more to ensure that we aren't just passing kids through our pipeline. The NAACP put a resolution out in 2014 to talk about literacy and how it impacts our economy. But I just draw your attention to this because some of you that may have been at the ACDC meeting last week heard me ask a question. I don't ask a question just so it can sound good. There's a reason why. And I don't think enough people are monitoring this, right? The percentage of folks, of students that are passing us by who are not at a level they need to be. So I think this issue is not just a school board issue, not just a superintendent issue, it's a community issue, right? And we need to do more in that regard to help our leaders be successful. All right, that's education. Also, I will note of education, we just finished up with a 4-week series on structural racism, which was well attended in partnership with Black Parents of Arlington and Trinity Nova. I think we had maybe around 300 individuals that had signed up and took this seminar. Many of you here participated. A young lady by the name of Ayo Maywood gave their instruction. We consider it was almost like graduate level instruction, but it was a really good seminar, a couple of seminars, and we thank you for participating in that. Okay, so next, and I know folks want to know about this. We talked about education, criminal justice, where are we at? So what's going on right now with us at NAACP with our criminal justice is that we are focusing on still today the 7 deaths that were in our retention facility. If you've been watching the media or reading some of our emails or distro, we did send a letter in March 15th to DOJ requesting they open an investigation. And on this screen, you'll see also in that very same letter, we sent copies to everyone CC'd, to include our local officials. Our Don Beyer was on there just now, so he received a copy. And I will tell you, here we are today, as I look at the calendar on June 14th, that we still have not moved the needle much or heard back from DOJ. I know there's some sensitivity surrounding all of this, but again, if this does not alarm you, if this does not shock you about how people have died in custody of law enforcement, and in the case of the next screen, I'm going to show you Mr. Darrell Beckton. Well, it still has not been closed. It's been 2 years nearly. We have a problem. We have a serious problem. We know there's many factors that lead to individuals in the jail system, i.e. mental health issues or perhaps drug usage. But there's a responsibility that we have to all citizens who end up in the hands of LEOs, law enforcement officials, that we provide basic, adequate health care, and if they need to other assistance, that we get that for them. So, next slide here. Yeah, the Becton family has put forward a lawsuit in an amount of $10 million. You probably know about this. The NAACP is not involved. That's in the courts right now. There's a number of defendants that are listed because justice, in the opinion of the NAACP, my friends, and many others, have not been served. I have often said, since I've heard of these deaths, that I think about, what if that was my father or my brother or my uncle or someone that I just knew of generally. And to be a family right now with no closure 2 years later, what's going on? And we need more engagement from the community. We need leadership from our elected officials to get down to the bottom of this. We have spoken to everyone under the sun, right? You name the person, we spoke to them. But it's a lot of finger pointing right about now. I will share with you a lot of it. And but we'll see what happens. But rest assured that the NAACP will not sit idly by and just let this go on without some form of resolution. Okay, criminal justice. The next screen here is a lot. It's busy, and this may take a good bit of our conversation. And I'm glad I have my vice chair of the housing committee here. But missing middle housing, right? I first want to start off by saying you need to know that the NAACP, we are chartered per our Constitution, per our bylaws, that we are to study conditions of local housing conditions in the local community, and we are to oppose all restrictive practices, whether public or private. So that being said, this is not a personal issue. This is not people, not the branch just thinking of something. We know, we have studied the housing conditions here in Arlington for a number of years under the leadership of Kellen, Macbeth, the entire team, Mike Heminger, Brian Coleman, the whole executive committee. We know there's disparities. There has been. And we also understand the historical context by which those barriers were implemented long before many of us arrived. So we wrote a letter in support of the missing middle housing phase 2 framework to move the needle forward, right? And at the same time, the Sierra Club did something similar just a few weeks ago, I think last week. The county board, on or about July 12th, will present their data at their work session. We also have around 1,000 letters that have been sent out. I did a screenshot here in support of our letter. And all we're saying is, look, let's free up some of the zones. Look, we need more affordable housing here in Arlington. I understand there's conversations to be had in so many lanes, whether you're talking about the environmental aspect, transportation, walkability, all of this, right? But this middle missing housing study has been going on for a number of years. And there's many folks in the community, I feel, that just want to kick the can down the road without any resolution. So I think it's a good step. We think at the NAACP believe it's a good step to move forward, to move the needle forward, and we shall see what happens. What do I have next here? All right, some events coming up. So you'll see on your screen here, we have, this is what I'm going to ask. We're going to have the Arlington Coalition of Black Clergy, which is all the Black churches and our allies and friends in Arlington. Will be hosting a celebration of freedom on Saturday, June 18th from 11 to 2 p.m. at Wilson Boulevard Christian Church, right there on Wilson Boulevard. And I know there's a lot of events this weekend, and I think the Dems have something going on at Jenny Dean Park later on in the afternoon. But we're asking you, because we're partners with Arlington Coalition of Black Clergy, to come out and support, even if it's only for an hour or two. Bring your friends, come out. This is the second year that we're start having. We didn't have this last year, but Juneteenth is a national holiday now. Come out, live blues, gospel, workshop, shopping. Please come out and support. And as always, please attend our monthly meetings. This coming Monday, we are going to have the independent policing auditor, Mumi Ibrahim, who is the first independent policing auditor, along with the co-chair, Gary Dean, who is also a 3-star retired Air Force general. They're going to come to our meeting on Monday and talk about their roles, their new roles. Keeping in mind they are new, so they're not going to be able to answer a lot of questions, but we thought it was important to bring them in and introduce them to our membership and our friends at the NAACP. So if you have not done so yet, please register, sign up to attend our monthly meeting, which will be this Monday. And I believe, nope, don't want to leave meeting. All right, how do you get me out of here? This go to meeting there, Rob. How do you get me out of this screen share stuff?
Click on the screen icon at the bottom of your window.
Okay, screen icon. Okay. No,
On the bottom, on your bottom of your window, it says screen between camera and leave. Between camera and leave, it says screen. Click on that so that it stops the sharing.
Okay, let me see here. Between camera
and leave, there's a icon that says screen. Or worse comes to worse, I can just take the privileges away from you. That might be the
privileges away from me because I don't see what's going on here.
Okay.
Can you do that?
I'm going to do that now.
Okay, because I'm not. Okay, I think
there we go. Yeah, okay, we're back. And
we're back. We're back. Okay, we're back.
All right, well, I want to thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. It was very well organized, and I want to welcome all your guests that you brought with you. We're so glad that you came to visit the Arlington Senior Democrats. I won't card you and find out your ages one by one, but you're welcome regardless of age.
Our ages?
Well, you know, you're supposed to be senior Democrats, but that's okay.
Hey, full transparency, I'm about to get the big 5-0 here in a couple weeks here, Bob. So hello, I think
that's old enough for me. That's all right for me.
I'll be there.
Okay, but anyway, I do want to ask you the first question, JD,
sure,
if I may, and that is, you know, a lot of us are really advocates of a big tent party for the Democrats. What advice do you have to the Democrats for helping us become a big tent party?
Yeah. So, you know, thanks for that question, Bob. And I remember early on in my days, and I want to try to walk this tightrope between NAACP nonpartisan and talking about how to be more involved in the party, right? So we at the NAACP want everyone to participate in the political process. We definitely want everyone to vote, right? And also at the NAACP, since we're nonpartisan, we have to be friends with everybody, whether that's the independents, Green parties, Republicans, Democrats. But I understand what's going on here in Arlington. And I think if you really pride yourself on being big tent inclusive, then you also have to project that, right? In my job in corporate America now, one of the things I work on is helping our CEO and the senior VPs on how do we build a more inclusive workforce, right? A lot of folks put things in writing. A lot of people put good briefings together, but you have to be intentional, right, as leaders and who you bring to the table. And I understand Democrats, we have our outreach, we have some other committees going on, but they also, when they speak, their voices need not only just be heard, they need to be acted upon, right? So if we're going to change this dynamic, Rob, when good suggestions, when suggestions are brought up, we have to embrace some of that, right? As long as it doesn't take away, I believe, from the values of the party. All right. So it's easier sometimes said than done, but I think from what I gather, just from outside, I think ACDC is moving the needle a little bit, right? We don't want to open up a can of worms as it relates to the school board process, because there's a whole nother conversation to have for the caucus, right? So I think you've heard our NAACP and our allies, our position on that and our rationale, because we didn't believe, and still don't, that in and of itself, right, was a fair and equitable way to go. But we'll see what happens. I mean, majority rules at the end of the day, but I think there's room for improvement there. But I would also argue and say that caused a lot of tension in the community, right? Especially in minority populations. And you have to appreciate and understand that. And so it's on leaders to make those changes and have those conversations. And I know whether it's in steering or not, you're going to have to embrace some of this, because if not, you won't be reflective of your community, right? We are evolving as a community, and again, I'll just leave it with you got to bring people to the table. You have to put people in positions that project the microcosm of our society, right? Thought leaders, inclusive leaders, they have to be there. My day is being a leader, even at the NAACP. I've been doing this for 10 years, 3 years as the second VP, 4 years as the first VP, and I'm in my 4th year as president now. And it's coming to an end, right? Because I know it's important for someone else perhaps to take the reign. I can't stay here forever. But I find out a lot of times, even in politics, that some people want to ride out till sunset and like they can't be replaced. And they don't want to embrace change, and they don't want to bring in young leaders and new thought leaders. You have to do that. Leaders are supposed to develop new leaders. And I learned that not only in 26 years in the Marine Corps, but I also learned that in what I do outside of the Marine Corps now. That's very important. So I look across the horizon, see where your leaders are, see if you're training and mentoring the next generation of leaders. And if you're not doing that in a way you're not able to measure it out, and then you guys, you're gonna have some work to do. A lot of this new generation, in my opinion, they will quickly pull away. I say they don't have they have zeal and passion, but the level of commitment sometimes is not where they don't like being told no. But it's nothing wrong with being told no. But you have to stay in the fight. And if you don't give them something to fight for, if you don't give them positions, then they're going to leave. They're going to take their talents to South Beach. And we don't want that, right? So this is Arlington. Arlington is not Atlanta or Houston, Texas, or Philly. I get it. But we pride ourselves in being an inclusive and diverse community. So I think the party, regardless of where you're at, the organizations need to be reflective of that. And I think a lot of folks are taking a hard look at where they are now. Are they open to all their communities? They're Black, white, Latino, LGBTQIE, everybody, right? Women, young, old, everybody. You have to be there. If not, you're going to be left behind. All right, Bob, that's what I have on that.
Thank you for your answer. Is there another question for JD?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead, please.
Who's asking the question? Everybody went on camera. I don't see any faces now.
Who said that they had a question? I'm sorry. Michael Raisin, do you have a question? No. Okay.
Just said, JD, I think you're doing a good job. You hit on the top issues. I think the 15 people, no, not 15 people, 7. The 7 people who died in 2015 is criminal. And when people go into the jail, they should be protected. And if they have mental health issues, they should be addressed. If they have drug issues, they should be addressed. The fact is they're not being addressed. And that's why they get depressed or whatever, and it's terrible.
Yeah. Mike,
Well, I'm sure that being in jail is very stressful for anyone.
Yeah, I mean, if you know, we've done some FOIA requests, and I will tell you, a lot of these folks, you may have read this in public newspaper reporting. You know, they've mentioned that some of these folks have come in and they've been hypertensive or had cardio or cardiovascular issues. Well, you know, I served in a combat zone, and I will tell you that being in a combat zone, your stress levels off the charts, right? Now, I can also tell you, I can imagine that if you take a person off the street who's already has some underlying health conditions, and you put them in a cell, that that's not going to help their cardiovascular system or hypertension. Okay, but to your point, Michael, we know for certain, and I think our county board is aware, our leaders are aware that we have to do more upfront, right, in the community, and provide, at least make available the type of services that we need to ensure our citizenry receives adequate help, mental help, emotional help, psychological help, all that's the same. Because of you know, drugs, you know, and you know, so it's bad out there. But there's so many issues, right? You know, we haven't even got into, and the NAACP is aware of this, right? The you know, gun violence, right, and the attack on women right now, right, as it relates to the woman's right to choose, right? We put out a resolution, national NAACP put out a resolution, but look at where the Supreme Court's headed. We have you know, folks all over this nation that are just attacking the citizenry, and we have to stick together. So whether it's the NAACP or, you know, League of Women Voters or it together, or we're with WOFA last night, or no matter who it is, we all need to get on the same accord and work together, because there's strength in numbers. And if we don't, right, people are going to divide and conquer us as a community, and we can't afford that.
Hey,
Any other-
JD, I do have a follow-up comment with respect to the jail. I think the training, the personnel in the jail need to be better trained. I think the sheriff, you know, I've talked to people who have worked in the jail previously on a professional level, not the jailers, but on a
Sure.
professional level. The sheriff just wants to get the accreditation every year. She just wants to do the minimum to get the accreditation every year. And I think the proposed sheriff, you know, Beth Arthur is not going to run again, I don't think. The one who's been deputy, she's of the same ilk. There needs to be a shakeup in the jail, and the personnel need to be better trained. And you know, I'm not opposed to paying people more, but they need to be better trained. I can say my daughter was in jail for a very minor offense, and when I went to visit her, they said you could go up and visit her now, and I went up. She didn't appear for about 45 minutes. And then it was time to leave, and I'm saying I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving this visiting room till I see my daughter. It's absolutely criminal what the personnel in the jail is.
Okay.
Mike,
Well, why don't we let other people have a chance to ask questions? Derek, please ask a question.
Yeah, I've got a question. It might take this in a slightly different direction, but I consider myself to be on the far left side of the Democratic Party, and am in sympathy with almost all of the liberal progressive agenda. One concern, however, that I have is you know, I see clearly the Republican Party as being whether it's voter suppression. You know, we all know I'd be talking to the choir what the Republican Party stands for. But for just a moment and say that, you know, my interest is also in trying to make the Democrats successful. As we look at this coming campaign, everything you hear is that we may lose the House, we may lose the Senate. And in looking at some of these things, you know, I'm not sure that the Democratic Party is hitting the nail on the head. I mean, yes, we're the good guys. We're trying to be inclusive. We make mistakes, but we're trying to be open to the LGBTQ society, to minority groups and so forth. But in the meantime, there are tens of millions of Americans, you know, maybe the big broad description would be white working class America, who is basically leaving the Democratic Party. You know, and I would say that it's they're angry because they're losing their white privilege, you know, as country change. So I acknowledge that. And I think somehow the Democrats have to do a better job of outreaching. Let me give two examples. You know, I think it was just a few years ago in Virginia where the Democrats took over the House of Delegates and the Senate, and automatically passed the accepting of Medicare for workers. You know, now that's 300,000 to 400,000, mostly rural, mostly white Virginians who benefited from this, and I don't see any benefit that we're deriving from this. You know, I don't. Where is our publicity campaign that's touting this to these people? And I won't monopolize this, but one big example I have is the whole thing with the Black Lives Matter, a hugely important, overdue, and an important movement. But even within that, when the first time I heard the phrase defund the police, I just cringed. I said, what a losing message that is. You know, yes, I mean it's right. I mean, we want to take the burden off the police. We want to have more mental health workers, more qualified people dealing with, you know, situations, you know, all of this in good intention. But if we're going to tout defund the police, we're out of office for the foreseeable future. That's absolute craziness, in my opinion. So, you know, yeah, we have the tension. We've got centrist Democrats, we've got progressive Democrats, but for goodness sake, you know, it's the Republicans that are the enemy.
Yeah.
Compromise within our party, and certainly the language and the messaging, they're way ahead of us on this. We've got to do a better job.
Rob, do you want me to answer some of that? And Derek, thank you. I'll start to the latter part of what you mentioned about Black Lives Matter, you know, the movement in and of itself has its pros and cons. I will say for the NAACP, we never took up defund the police from the NAACP. All right. And I will tell you that, you know, sometimes the loudest person in the room is the one that gets all the attention, and defund the police kind of took off for some odd reason or another, and it was misconstrued and taken out of context. We did, you know, talk about, you know, reallocation of certain resources as relates to something you mentioned, mental health professionals, counselors, things like that, in our communities. We never went that hard about take all the money away from the police. No, we didn't do that. Similarly, you will see, right? Think about like CRT and what happened with that. I remember when I first heard CRT, and that was a Republican word, and that it just took off like wildfire, right? And there were so many negative connotations associated with it, regardless of the fact that the principle and theory itself was being taught at the the high end of the college level, and it caused divide, right? And I think there's so much anxiety and tension in our communities right now with people. It does not take much. So you make a good point that if individuals aren't able to relate and understand the electorate, the people, and talk to the issues that matter to them, I don't care what party you're in, you're going to come up short, right? You're going to come up short. So there's a lot of work to do. I won't pretend, since I'm here in my capacity as NAACP, go into my view and what I believe transpired here in Virginia. But there's thoughts on both sides as to why certain things came out the way they did, and we didn't take over the governorship and all that other stuff. So, but some folks
JD,
say, right, and I don't know. But all we did was encourage our folks to go out and vote at the
right.
NAACP.
Yeah, JD, let me just make one last comment, and then I'll shut up. In no way, yeah, in no way am I criticizing the NAACP or this is more of a general messaging thing. And my last comment is you brought up CRT, and somehow the Democrats have let this go as just oh no, we don't do it, we the schools don't do it, so why in the heck are not the Democrats coming and say, what is CRT? CRT is teaching history. We advocate teaching history at every level. We're not trying to make little white children feel guilty. That's not the purpose. We're teaching history. But we give up the ground on that. I felt Obama gave up when we were trying to reform healthcare 12 years ago. The public option took it off the table before we it's I think the way we package our message. I mean, we're doing the right things. We've got the right ideas. We're the party of compassion and inclusion, but we're just not doing a very good job of I think of forcefully making that case. And the Republicans have a bad case, but they make it so strong and uncompromisingly, they take the offensive. Thank you.
If I can just say two things, and I want to cover this while we have an audience, and I'm glad that you're the chair, and it's good to see you, Steve, chair of ACDC here. Bob, you asked earlier about some of the reasons perhaps why certain folks in our community don't get involved. And I'll just say this, we talk a lot about meeting people where they are, right? Meeting people where they are. And I was just strongly encouraged that when I talked earlier about being inclusive and thought leaders, someone has to take, you say, the bull by the horn, right, Steve, and think about, you want groups like the NAACP, which is a historical social justice civil rights organization, to be somewhat closer aligned with the Democratic Party, then you have to listen to us. You have to listen to the people and embrace some of their recommendations. And because we do think it's a collective. It's not just JD Spain talking. And what I'm so proud about is at our organization, and if many of you seen our photos of our team, it doesn't get any more diverse than that. We had the intention, we built a diverse and thoughtful team of individuals from all walks of life, all socioeconomic makeup. And I don't see that a lot, right, as I engage with ACDC. And I want to go back to something, where's Mike at? Mike mentioned about the sheriff stuff and the leadership. It's culture, brother. If you want, it's a culture that you have to change, even in leadership. And I'll share this in criminal justice reform, and I'll be quite frank because I share this with Matt DeFerranti. I share this with everybody. We had an opportune time as a community when Chief Farr left and resigned to really work outside the box and perhaps take our community as far as policing into the 21st century model that President Obama and his team put together before he came out of office. We didn't do that. What we did, we claimed we had a national search, and we went right next door and got the number 2, who honestly, even today, is not embracing culture change within the criminal justice system. Is actually giving our Commonwealth attorney a hard damn time in doing her job. And people need to wake up and understand that, right? So if you want change, you got to make the change at the top, right? And that did not happen. So there's many layers to it, in my opinion. This is JD talking, but we have to do better. If not, we're going to lose what little bit we have. And again, if you're not talking sincerely, if you're not an NAACP, if you're not being an agitator to promote good change, not just running your mouth, and productive change and changing policy at the end of the day that helps people, then what are you really doing? You're just showing up and talking. It takes time, but there's a lot, because there's too many people out there struggling right now that need our help as leaders. And all of you are leaders, right? All of you are leaders. So I'm good, Bob. I'll leave it. Whatever else you have left.
I do want to just chime in for just 1 minute, because I think it's very important, and the us who are seniors sort of have a lifelong experience in this. We have many different institutions. You know, the executive branch of Arlington County is one institution. The judiciary is a different institution. Arlington Democrats and the National Democratic Party are another institution. NAACP is admittedly a freestanding, separate institution of long history. And it takes a certain sophistication to realize that each institution has its own process for change and its own evolving leadership and positions. And one of the interesting things is that the positions of the Arlington Democratic Party, which does evolve and expand and elaborate over the years, are different from those of the NAACP, are different from those of the National Party to some limited degree.
Yes.
And you just have to sort of understand, take the pulse and take the measure. And everything in each institution does take time. I personally find the national Republican move toward things like CRT, which I call wedge issues, as particularly unfortunate, because I have spent my life defending the idea of freedom of expression and academic freedom, particularly in higher education, and I find it very offensive that anyone at a state legislature in the U.S. Congress would tell any institution of learning how they have to teach and what they have to teach. That's just where I come from a First Amendment perspective. But we all have to approach each of these issues with a great deal of nuance, compassion, and assumption that we're dealing with fellow citizens of goodwill. And I think that one of the reasons why it was important for you to be here today was to carry your message, because I and everyone else on this call is a citizen of goodwill and does have an open mind and an open heart. So I know that we've aired a few differences of opinion here today, but it is that spirit. It is in that spirit of let's keep talking and keep working and keep thinking. And I think I took every remark in that sense. Do you have a final conclusion you'd want to make?
I would just say let peace and harmony prevail, Bob. And for those, some folks may know what that means. And that we look here at the NAACP to be good stewards in our community, just as many of you, to help our citizenry, right, and progress. I understand the goodwill aspect, but I also feel that sometimes, our where we are today, and I will say the same about JD. Sometimes where I've ended up at on an issue comes from how I was perhaps taught or told or informed, and it may not have been the right thing, right? So I think we just have to be open to dialogue, which we're doing right now, being able to, again, work together and be thought leaders, right, and then move forward. So I really appreciate this opportunity. I have Brian, who's up still here. Jamie is still with us. I think a few of them probably dropped off. James Younger has joined as well. Thank you, team, for being here with you. I see our retired Senator Mary Whipple here, and Steve Baker, and Craig, Taka's Karen Jones, Mike. Everyone's here. It's good to see all of y'all. We'll stay on the battlefield for change together, because together we stand, divided we fall, right? And we can't be falling.
Absolutely. And I want to remind everybody that the next big event, aside from Juneteenth, is our primary a week from today on the 21st. So please, if you haven't voted early, please vote at the polling place on the 21st. Tell all your friends to vote. We want a big turnout. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting until the July 2nd Tuesday in July. Thank you all so much for coming, and thank you, JD, for your excellent presentation.
Yeah.
Stay safe. God bless.
Thank you.